Podcasting with Ceri Jones.
Hi everyone, and welcome to my Christmas podcast. This week's episode comprises of snippets from all the episodes from the past 12 months, 33 in total. Some recorded at my studio, or by telephone, or on location. And after investing in some outdoor equipment, some have been recorded while fishing on the waterside. As with my photography, I try to achieve the best I can while using high-end mics and editing software to get the best quality production. Each episode takes up to 2 days to make. So to help to continue with making these podcasts, I've set up a Patreon channel. And for those who have already joined, a big thank you for your support. And for those who haven't, and have enjoyed the podcast over the last 17 months, please consider becoming a Patreon, where you'll get a podcast every week, exclusive episodes, and bonus content, and behind-the-scenes photography. And also available to Patreons on Christmas Eve is a podcast episode with my good friend Colin Folan, and his previous episode is such a favourite of many, especially his story of the King of Belgium. So I have already exclusive episodes all throughout December, from my chat with Emily Lewis, who's a retired river bailiff. Great stories there, really well worth a listen. My full season summary, what I think is one of the best wild trout lakes in Wales, Talabont. And also, anyone wanted to fish in Clywedog, I have an exclusive episode with Russell Owen, where I share a boat with him and he takes me onto the cages and gives all hints and tips and his top 6 flies, and invaluable information for anybody wanting to fish Clywedog. And as we were on the cages, we could see some huge specimens lurking beneath, so things are looking good there for next year. So onto this podcast. Sit back and enjoy a glass of malt, a pint of stout, or a mulled wine, and enjoy my summary of 2021. And I wish you all a Merry Christmas. Episode 27, Dean Kibble from New Zealand.
You don't choose the permit choose you. Because you cast at a lot of them and ignore everything. They're very hard to hook on the fly. And,
great to photograph, lovely looking fish.
Yeah, we went there with Solid Adventures to Keokoko, and I got a Grand Slam there, and it was the first one they'd had in that area for about 8 years. I came off and had all the guides slapping me on the back and buying me drinks, and whenever I go there now, they all remember me and they come up and make a fuss of me.
So what is the Grand Slam?
Yeah. That's a permit, a bonefish, and a tarpon the same day. The 3 of them.
Oh, right.
The 3 of them the same day, yeah.
Well, being as Welsh, we're used to having Grand Slams, aren't we?
Yeah.
28, Mark Regan on Loch Corrib.
Oh, they were the early spring fishermen. My dad used to tell me about those in the Corrib, and they went out in the one-man punts, and they were commercial fishing. The fish were sent from Oughterard by bus or train. There was a train that time, and they were in Billingsgate 2 days later, and they kept, those fishermen, that was their job. And then later in the year, in May and everything, they took out the rich gentry, gillying them. But when they did the spring fishing, Dad was saying they sometimes slept underneath the punts. So you can imagine in February how, we've got all our modern Gore-Tex clothing and everything now. They probably had, oiled cloth, keep them thing. They were in rowing these punts with 3 hazel rods. So they were extraordinarily skillful, keeping the 3 rods going. They took the line in by hand. They had a net to net the fish. And they sometimes slept underneath that punt in a bag of with a bag of straw to keep them warm. So they were pretty phenomenal, and they knew the lake really, really well. They had to know it. And if they caught a perch or something like that, they would eat it and fight, but they never ate the trout because they were too valuable.
Yeah.
So as I said, and I believe that the trout from Ballindiff Bay, it's documented that in Billingsgate, you got a bigger price for them because, like what you were saying earlier, they were the really short, deep fat fish, and they were really pink-fleshed.
Yeah.
And if they could get them from there, sometimes they actually row down. Now, that's a good row from, Oughterard to Annadown.
They must have had
back
arms
up.
like cow's legs.
Oh, they must have been unbelievable men, really. Just to manage the boat that day. I suppose they just did it steadily and consistently. And they're small boats. And
Yeah.
if there's any kind of a big wave at all, it's like being in a kayak. You really need to know what you're doing. And there's a few people still use them today and just do a little bit of it just to keep the tradition alive.
29, John Horsey.
Well, one of my clients from Italy, Enrico Pini, caught a 40-pound, 8-ounce pike on the fly fishing with me, and I weighed it.
Wow.
And it was a huge fish. We'd actually seen it come for a fly before, and we decided to leave the area, or I decided to. And he said, no. He couldn't speak a lot of English, but no, big fish, big fish. I said, I know, let's rest it. It'll still be there. We'll just go up to the end of the bay, and then we'll change flies, go back and have another go for it. So we spent 20 minutes somewhere else, came back into the part of Villis that we were fishing before, changed flies, first cast down in the same area, 2 pike came after the fly, and both were huge, but they didn't take it. So he cast out again, started retrieving the fly, brought it back up. As it was coming up, you could see this fish come up, it took it and went down. And quite a long time later, we got it into the boat, 40 pounds, 8 ounces.
Wow.
What a fish that was. And at the time, I just wanted it to be over 30. And when they, because there were 3 of us in the boat, the other guy, one of the guys could speak good English. And I was holding the scales. He said, no, 40. I said, no, you hold it. So I looked at it, and it never crossed my mind it was over 40.
30, John Buckley from Killarney. And I think it was something I learned early on, that when you're fishing for these small trouts, they're lightning quick, and they, you get a quick, and you feel the tug, and it's gone. So after a while, you're getting fine-tuned, and you're like in the zone, and you're waiting for any sort of disturbance, the line or tweak or pull, and you strike, and you're getting quite confident, and these fish are coming now, and you're doing all right. But every now and again, you're lightning quick. The line goes, and you strike, and as you strike, then you'll see like a 5 or 6 pound grilse just swim away, like, and you haven't given enough time, like, And that's why at the end of my podcast, I got a bit of a line that said, "Don't strike too soon," and that's the reason.
Yeah, but you're 100% right, and I can completely relate to what you're saying. Is because we meet plenty of small fish, and they're lightning quick. You're like you said, you're in the zone. You're ready every cast. You're ready for the fish. The one thing you need when you're fishing for salmon is patience. You got to leave them turned down with that fly. It's salmon will come up and just snap it like a trout will, but the majority of the time they'll give a swirl under it, sip it down, and the hardest thing to do is strike. The hardest thing not to do is strike.
Yeah.
Every instinct you have is telling you to lift the rod. Now there's areas on that lake and all the lakes in Killarney where we will specifically target salmon with the flies, because we've been doing that over the years. In different areas, we know we need to slow down. We've hit that certain point to target a salmon. So if a trout comes up, you kind of switched off, right? You live to fight another day with no interest in you, so you don't really care. So you actually tuned into hitting hooking that salmon. So you do slow down. But it's like every person I've ever fished out of a boat that made a salmon, 9 times out of 10 they'll always lose the first one.
31, Alan Parfitt.
We started going up every summer. It's a long old drive, mate. 13 hours drive. You have to take a ferry across to the mainland of Orkney. You have to drive across Orkney and then take another ferry then to cross onto the island of Hoy. The farm is right above a beach called the Bay of Creekland. It's a beach about the size of Barry Island Beach, I expect. I was up there for a month one year, and I never saw a single person on the beach in a month.
Wow.
And when the tide goes out, the tide used to, it's an inlet, a Scapa Flow it is. You had Grahamsay Island, 200 yards across from where we stayed, and the tide used to race through like a huge river, and the sea trout would come in and cruise the edge of it. And I used to fly fish for them there. Crystal clear water. And out in the middle, there were some skerries. And years ago, there probably were a couple of hundred grey seals on there at low water.
Yeah.
They're nesting on there. And you'd lay in bed at night, because the farm is right on the beach, and you could hear the seals mewing at night all through the night. It's like cats. And but the old adage, the seal comes along, don't bother fish.
Yeah.
I took John Galvin, the chap I mentioned. I was up there when he was up there with Vaughan, and we fly fishing for the sea trout, and these skerries a couple hundred yards offshore, and the seals, being curious thing, they come in to look at you.
Right.
And John said to me, he said, Parth, he said, everyone calls me Parth, by the way. He said, Parth, he said, how many seals can you count there in front of us, watching us? 38, I said. He said, I can count 40. And we were fishing, and they were no more than 25, 30 yards from us, and we were catching sea trout.
The sea trout weren't bothered?
The sea trout were not bothered at all.
32, Jimmy Terrell. It's come to that time, I'm going to ask you a question, which I ask everyone. And you probably know what the question is going to be. Where would you want to be to make your last cast?
On the River Gower, it's paradise. And if you're ever over here, I'll take you and you'll see why. It's a small river, and if you were out there on a summer's evening, you were in a different world, because there's virtually nothing, only a farmhouse here or there every few miles, and it's paradise. Just you, the river, and hopefully a hatch of flies on it. And there's nothing better. I've had some of my nicest evenings on it. You could actually sit there for hours on a summer's evening, just looking at fish rising. There's nothing nicer, actually. Just somewhere. There's actually, if you're ever over, I'll take you and show you. There's even there's a weir in a certain part of it. There's no houses near this. There's a weir and there's a graveyard. And I often said to myself, we'd love to be buried there. The graveyard is probably 200 yards off the river, in the middle of nowhere. A house at the graveyard. It's just a paradise, honestly, paradise. And I love it. It's probably the nicest place that I've ever had to fish in my life. Like, the fishing is so good in it, and nobody fishes it. You kind of have it all to yourself. But you wouldn't see a footprint. To me, that's nice. And over the years, I've learned different laneways to go down through meeting farmers who don't even fish. And if the fishing is good, take a fish home and drop it off on the doorstep on the way home, and you're always welcome back. Little laneways where there's, you've no access, only those laneways. And you learn that they're there over the years. Nobody else would know that. And sometimes you can drive in and park right on the edge of the river. It's just laneways, the farmer access lanes for fields, farmers. That's how I learned all that river. You'd nearly have it to yourself. But again, if the fishing is good, keep a fish, drop it on his doorstep on the way home, and you'll always be welcome back. You'd be welcome if you didn't drop it anyway, but that to me is home from home. Nothing nicer.
Awesome. Hopefully we will meet up this year.
Please God, everything will be calmer down then towards the summer, and if you're over, just give me a call. We'll look after you.
I will do. I thoroughly enjoyed our chat, and hope to see you this year.
I loved it. Thanks very much. Yeah.
33, Cliff Harvey.
I seen the trout come out from under the stone, grab my worm and take it under the stone.
Wow.
So I give him a few seconds, and I whacked him and I had him out. And I ran all the way home. That's got to be about a mile and a half. I ran all the way home with a bloody fish still on the hook until I got into the house to show my father.
The regional boat championships it was. And it was in Llandeg, and I was drawn with you. And I thought, I got this made now. And we actually did. We won it. Not only did we win it, I think we finished by about 12 o'clock. And then...
packed up, we had out in me.
Yeah. And that was it. That was 6 fish, and then you stopped. It's not like now, you point to this, but I still got the tankard now.
There we are.
Yeah.
Yeah. I won the competition there off the bank. I didn't want to fish the boat, and it was a competition. I can't recall who the organisers were, but Gareth Edwards was there. And it ended up I won it. So
Did you?
he presented me with a book, which I got in my library up there now.
On rugby?
Trout Fly Fishing by J.R. Hartley.
I thought you were going to say
Can you remember that?
Yeah.
J.R. Hartley. And it wasn't about bloody fishing at all. J.R. Hartley was a bloody advert on the television, it was.
That's right.
I won that. He gave me that on a day, and he wrote in it then to Cliff from Gareth, because I fished with Gareth Edwards 3 or 4 times.
Yeah.
And the prize was a weekend away in a country estate up in Midlands. And my missus played out because I took Paul. Paul was only young.
34, my early season bank tactics. It's not until later on in the year you get the colours, you get the greens and the claret buzzers, and some of the English waters then they'll have orange and reds, but very rare you get those in Wales. It's normally the deeper colours, the clarets and the blacks, and the darker olives. Size wise, like I said, I will use 10s, even though some of these buzzers which you see on the Welsh waters at least, they're very small. They're more or less equivalent to, I would say, a 16 or a 14 even. 12 size at best. You rarely get big buzzers. But I think, well, fishing 12s and 10s, that's all I would fish. I wouldn't go smaller than 12s or 10s. Even though the flies themselves coming off are smaller, I think it's why match something the same size? Well, if you go a little bit bigger, the temptation for the fish is to take your fly because it's bigger. Some logic in that. It's worked for me, so I'll stick to it. And the larger the hook, the deeper the fly will fish as well. A great method, which I thoroughly enjoy using, begin the season as well, is when you're fishing these epoxies, a team of buzzers, is I love just casting out when you've got a wind either left to right or right to left, and then just cast a long line out and just hold on to it. Even if there's a wind or there's a nice breeze, and just keep in touch with them. Slow figure of 8, and you get the arc coming in the line. And what I find with early season buzzer fishing, it's not like the summer where you've got to be quick and you're missing them. More often than not, this time of year, the fish are hungry. As soon as you slow figure of 8 in that line round, the line just rips out your hand. The takes are quite savage and they're on. And more often than not, they stick. 35, Mark Roberts, River Entomology. Do you find there's a difference between, say, an iron blue and a March brown, the type of rise, or is it just a visual? You just got to see the insect.
No, absolutely. And this is one of the things when you get mass hatches that you really, if you're not catching with what you think is fishing, you've got to observe and perhaps change your tactics. Rise forms will denote quite often the type of fly that the fish are feeding on. It will also denote the rise form, because with a larger fly like a March brown, it's quite often a big splashy gloop, and you can hear it. You'll hear it before you see it. A slashing rise is quite often to a large fly like a March brown, or a large brook dun, or a sedge pattern often gets slashed at, right? Because it excites the fish. And it's a big mouthful. Whereas your iron blue duns are quite often just sipped, just tiny little kiss of the water almost. Because one thing to remember here is the size of the rise does not dictate the size of the fish.
Do you get them on the river, like, again, I'm bringing up the Corrie, but the mayfly there, obviously you get May. It could be like the start of May, the end of May, but you do get a good hatch for like 2 weeks or so. And then it goes quiet then, right?
Yeah.
July, you'll get another hatch of mayfly, but they're a lot smaller.
Yeah, that often happens. And I think that's nature's way of securing survival. You'll find that's where you get a lot of these hatches spread over a period of time, because the eggs and it's not the adults it's for the survival of the adults. It's for the survival of the eggs.
Not put your eggs in one basket.
Exactly.
36. Paul Proctor.
Yeah.
What is it you're drinking?
I'm drinking a Shipyard Pale Ale, American Pale Ale. It's quite a nice beer, is that? You get it on draft in my local, but this obviously I'm not. I'd like to say I'm sat in my local having a pint, but I'm not.
Well, I knew after talking on Monday, you said you were going to get some drink and get comfortable for the chat. So I thought, I don't know if you can hear that. I've got exactly the same thing.
Aye,
and I
just heard it, yeah.
And I'm pouring now a can of draft Guinness. It's not quite same from a pub, but it's the closest thing we can get at the moment.
No. Overseas, trophy trout at £10 plus. Now, I've been chasing a double down in New Zealand, these my speeders for lots of years, and it's never just clicked. I've come so blinking close, £9, 6 ounce, £9, 8 ounce, £9, 12 ounce, blah, blah, blah. But what I'm leading up to, getting back on track, up in Iceland, my two biggest fish, I had a fish of 60. I can't remember. I mean, and this is why I keep diaries, because I could go to the diary. It was £16 and so many ounces, an absolute monstrous thing. And my biggest on dry fly, and these are from Thinglever, Lake Thinglever, or Thinglevatten.
On the lake?
Yes.
Yeah, I know it, yeah.
Yeah. My biggest on dry was £40, 15 ounce. And I took a bazillion photographs of that, and it is one fish.
37. Sue Shaw.
I arrived. I wanted to go out that night, and of course nobody else did, because they'd all had quite a late night, they'd enjoyed themselves. So I just went out on my own. I thought, well, I'm just going to have a little wander out. And I bumped into Marion Davis, from Wales. Yeah, I bumped into her, and we chatted about where she was heading. She was going up to the pub. I said, well, I'll just walk up to the pub with you. And so we got to the entrance, and she said, well, come in and join us. I said, I can't join you. She said, come on in. No, I can't. And this was to and fro. And I said, look, it's your team in there. I said, you need to go and sit with them. So anyway, I decided I would go in, and I went and sat at the bar. And she joined the rest of the team. And then the team manager came across and said, come and join us. I said, I can't. I said, it's your Welsh team meeting or whatever. I said, you might be talking tactics. I said, I can't come and infiltrate. He convinced me to go and sit with them. So I did. Well, we had such a giggle, and they were playing silly games. It wasn't a team talk. It was just something to relax and just have a night off. And I had stickers on my forehead. I'm not even sure what games we played, but they were all a bit silly, and you had to have forfeits. They were like shots, and I'm thinking, are they trying to sabotage me?
That's it.
Or what?
It was a ploy.
But it was. But we had such a laugh. It was really nice. And then shortly afterwards, I was given a daffodil made out of felt, which was gorgeous, and I was made an honorary member of the Welsh team. And I've still got that daffodil today. It's lovely. It's in my little cabinet.
38. John Ferguson. Something you mentioned about when I said, what vice have you got? Tell me about your vice.
Well, the one that I'm using now was actually my dad's. So it's a Diner King Professional. It's got a big heavy duty vice clamp, things like that, and the gallows and all that. But I don't use the gallows, to be honest with you, because I would say that's mainly for paralooping and dry flies and things like that, or if you're spinning big dubbing loops and that. But I just kind of mainly use the standard Professional. But it was my dad's, so it means a lot to me using it.
Yeah.
So it does. It's sentimental. I mean, to be honest with you, I've tied a few flies on it when he owned it, when he was showing me these things and that. But to get it after he's tied, because it's like, the vice itself has got to be over 28-year-old, and it's still tying with a boss to this day. I mean, I'm rattling orders left, right and centre, and that's the vice that I use. See the the first vice that I started up on, it was a wee plastic black diner vice. It was a wee cheapo one. It was about £50-60, something like that. And I learnt in that vice, tied on it for years.
Yeah. That was a few quid, mind then. I suppose 50-60 quid.
Aye, that's true. That was all I could afford back then.
Yeah.
Until I was lucky enough to get my dad's one. And well, hopefully I've got it for a few years yet, Ceri, and it keeps up to the jobs that I keep putting in. Because I don't want to, put it to the side or anything like that. Too sentimental for that.
39, Marco Orsi.
Started fishing a pool that's called Kevin's Cry, spinning with a black and gold flying sea, and water was coloured, perfect conditions. I caught a 6 pound grilse, quickly returned, I thought, it's a good start to the day. And a couple of casts later, I hooked a fish and I thought, this is substantial, it's like it is irresistible force, and I thought,
yeah.
Fish took a huge run through the pool I was fishing up onto the next pool.
Upriver.
And he hit the lip of the pool above us, and I just caught the top of his back, and I thought, oh gosh, Chunky, we need the net, because we didn't have a net. So Chunky's called Chunky because he's chunky. He's about
big lad, like.
He's a big lad, and the hut was about 400 yards away. So he ran up, and God bless him, he came back with a net. But this time the fish had come back, and he was in the pool I'd hooked him, and he was rolling, and I could see the hook was just on the outside of the mouth of the and he had a huge cape, this fish.
Yeah.
It was an autumn fish, Wasn't, you've seen the pictures. If you look at it, people think it's a brown trout,
Yeah.
But
Colour on it.
It's an autumn coloured fish, and about 20, say half hour I was playing this fish, and strong current as well. And he just managed to come into a backwater, and you could see the full length of the fish, and Chunky netted him for me. And I thought, just like the legs, because you've caught a big fish on your own, haven't you? And you know all about this, and you just get this feeling, thinking, oh my gosh, this is something special, So we had the scales and we weighed it, and I said, let's weigh it again, This is a 35 pound plus fish. What's classed as a portmanteau fish? I don't know if you've ever heard of that term. The old way fishermen used to class anything above 30 pound as a portmanteau, and anything below that was like ladies' handbags, It was like
Episode 40, Fly Fishing and Fly Tying editor, Mark Bowler.
So he went up there, and I said to Glenn, if you get some shots of David there, you'll get the mountain in the background and David fishing. And as he was doing it, I noticed some little fish dimpling in this bay, where Glenn was. So I said to Glenn, look, there's some little fish dimpling here, Glenn. I'll flip out, and if you set your camera up, I reckon I'll be able to cast towards the camera, and hopefully I'll get one, and then there'll be a splash in front of the camera, and I'll be in the background
with the motor
behind me. Yeah. So I said, so I got flipped out, and he set his camera up on the tripod, and I said, I cast out towards him, and he said, "Are you ready?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "Are you ready?" "Yeah." I'll start retrieving. I just made about 2 or 3 retrieves, and this almighty gleam just rolled over the wet flights,
Wow.
And I thought, what on earth is that? And I lifted into it, and I remember David said, "Have you got one, Bowler?" I said, yeah, I have. And he said, "Make it jump for the camera." And I said, "David," "you haven't seen this fish." I said, "It is so big, it won't get off the ground."
Really?
And it was, I tell you, there's a fish farm on the loch, and it grew rainbows, and sometimes they'd escape.
Oh.
But this one must have escaped a long time ago, because we eventually got it in. It was £19 1 ounce.
You're kidding.
And it was a massive rainbow, absolutely massive rainbow, and it was so funny. I thought this will get off in a minute, it's got to, but it didn't. And I caught it on on a size 12 with Pearly and Victor, I called it.
41. Alan Rees, A Guide to Sea Trout.
In a pool tail, which is maybe 1.5 feet, 2 foot, the fish don't need to move. But if I put a really noisy fly, say, for example, a large muddler or something really big and bulky through it, these fish have got lateral lines. They know that in the pool, it may be that they interpret it as something that is like a predator, come in there, wah, and then they scatter. Whereas when I fish something like the American Express, it slips into the water quietly and it comes through and it doesn't really disturb them because it's
slim, isn't it?
Right. But as it swims past their nose, there's just I don't know whether it's an instinctive reaction, like we are sat here now. If I threw something at you, your immediate reaction would be
throw it back.
Or, well, yeah, it could be, but you'd have to catch it first.
Yeah.
But why would you catch it? Why wouldn't you just look at it and watch it fall to the floor?
Yeah.
So when your fly's going past these fish, all they see is a bit of movement, and they go grab. So it'll depend where I start in the pool, what flies I use, and what tactic.
42. Neil Darling.
I've got very fond memories of fishing camping trips to Fermanagh with Dad, using the old canvas tent that him and his granddad would have used in their sort of fishing trips.
Brilliant.
And I can remember thinking as a kid it was more akin to a circus tent really than a sort of a tent you'd take camping. It was a huge thing. It had seen better days. It had a fair few trips to Scotland, I think, with Granny and Grandad as well. So, that was all adventures in its own right. And, the Dad, during a heavy fall of rain one night, decided that Germaline, the sort of bacterial cream, was a great way of stopping the water coming in. And, of course, as soon as he touched the tent and the tent side, it sort of flooded in after that. So, there's memories like that through, and trips to. We used to stay in a place called the Willow Pantry Bed and Breakfast in Enniskillen. One of the lasting memories of that is the Ulster Fry breakfast that you used to get every morning. It was like, I don't know, an English breakfast on steroids. I think you were guaranteed at least sort of 3 types of bread: fried bread, soda bread, and potato bread, and all the usual sausage and egg. And so that set you up for the day's fishing. There was no lunch needed after that.
43. Sean Jones. Do you fish the Taff much?
Not often. I've done an international with the Welsh team on the River Taff. That was good. That was a good experience, and I learnt a lot of the more local boys. Although I'd practiced it and fished it in the past. But I learned a lot from that international. That was a real experience. That was.
Well, was that Merthyr way? Is it?
Yeah. It was on the Merthyr stretch. It was one of the higher stretches.
I think they kept it quiet over the years, but I think with social media now, people are sharing pictures and that. They realise that stretch of water, the Taff, is a really good river, isn't it?
Yeah, and going back to seeing photos and again, as you say, social media of that river running black from the colliery water and so on, it's really come back.
So tell me, how did you start fishing then?
By nagging my father, basically.
Because obviously he's a fisherman himself,
yeah,
isn't he?
Dad's a fly fisher as well. So just by nagging, started sitting in the boat, gillying or netting or whatever else I was doing, not throwing his flies in or whatever else.
So how old would you have been then?
About 5.
Was it?
Yeah, I started the age of about 5. I was fly tying slightly before that, really. Sitting with him on his lap, tying flies with him. And then I progressed into tying flies on my own. Dad would take me up the pond. We'd sit and fish the pond together. I'd normally catch a fish or maybe 2 he'd cast out for me, I'd retrieve. Same as most kids tend to start. But I had a massive interest in catching minnows. So I dropped the rod and that was me. Once I'd had one, no matter how many he was catching, I had no interest. Once I've had the one, I started going catching the minnows then.
Is it? That's an art in itself, isn't it?
I used to bring them home and they'd end up in a glass jar dead.
44. David Hoppy.
Now
the first taupe I caught, I was petrified. I'll be honest.
I bet.
I got it next to the kayak, and yeah.
I bet when you're playing those fish, you can hear dun 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 dun.
Absolutely. It's when that fin comes up when you brought them up. It's just like, whoa, this is epic. Yeah.
And it's not like you're fishing off a charter boat. You're in amongst the fish, then, aren't you? The same level.
Absolutely. It's funny. Twice a charter boat has come and dropped anchor, probably 20 meters from me, which is really quite dangerous. And I'm like, guys, is the ocean not big enough?
Wow.
So yeah, no mark where I fished.
Clones.
So the biggest one was, again, you can't weigh them on the kayak, so I really don't know the weight.
Yeah.
That photo circulated around social media, and there's quite a few people suggested around 65 to 70 pound mark, which is just an epic hope. And that was bang on middle of May. The weather was lovely. It was overcast. There was just no waves. It was flat, calm mill pond. I put my bait down, which was just a mackerel head, would you believe, on a circle hook. And within about 2 minutes, it was just a little, just like Jaws, click, click, click.
Was it
on the reel? I'm not even exaggerating. It really was. It was click, click, click. The ratchets off.
Oh,
hey, what's this? And then it just went, and just an unstoppable run. It was just the adrenaline. I wouldn't like to check my blood pressure. You know, 5 minutes, 5 seconds into the fish taking the bait. But yeah, incredible. And the fight was just next level. So the fish, huge fish, it got into the tidal run, and it actually pulled the anchor from its ground, and the kayak was actually drifting with the tide. So I was playing this fish, looking at the kayak, looking at the drove, all these things going on in the middle of it. I'm on my own, literally nobody around me for a good couple of miles.
45, fish scientist James Barry.
One good fish in the morning. We got up at silly o'clock, 4 a.m. I think, and we headed out. It was actually a funny story behind it. The engine wouldn't start on the boat. So you obviously get down to your boat, you're ready to go, you're looking out on the lake, and we go to pull the engine, no go out of the engine. So I was just annoyed over the top of the boat, and my friend that was with me, Jason, said, "Oh look, I'll just row us over to this bay, and we'll give it a go." And at this stage, I was sitting up top. I was just annoyed, the engine not working.
Yeah.
Ready to go back to the B&B and just say, "That's it, enough of this." But Jason thankfully anyway rowed us over to the little bay, and as we were approaching, or probably 100 yards out, we could just see, I was sitting up the top, we could see this fish just sipping behind an island. And I shouted back to Jason, "Yeah, I think I see something here." Yeah. And sure enough, we kind of rowed up onto this island, really nice and stealthy actually. Now that I look back at it, it probably helped us a bit that the engine didn't start.
Yeah.
And it's just sipping away. And I just set up the fly, waited for the fish to come up. Textbook stuff, just drop the fly beside where he came up. And sure enough, he just came up and had it. And then all hell broke loose. It was just almighty battle. And he was just such a pretty fish. And yeah, definitely one I won't forget in a while. Just great buzz. Just food for the fly fishing soul up there around mayfly time. It's great fun.
Yeah. Well, it must have been a blessing, really, that the engine didn't work.
That's it, everything, all these things happen for a reason, as they say, yeah.
Did you get it to work after?
I was messaging Jason saying that all I need is a bit of sunshine on the engine there, will heat it up a bit. And sure enough, when the sun came up and hit it, it was fine. One turn of the engine had started, and we headed off then, but we actually didn't catch that for the rest of the morning.
46. Paul Slaney. He was saying as well, you had, he's saying about all these, like the hippos, the crocs. You had a close escape falling off a boat in...
Yeah, you want to ask my wife now when we finish this. Yeah, we went, I went on a bone fishing trip, and my wife came with me. One of the only times she ever come fishing with me. And anyway, we'd done some bone fishing, it was the end of the day, and we were just messing about, so we thought we'd try some sharks, shark fishing. So we caught a barracuda, cut it up to chum the sharks in. That's what we did. So now we're on a 19-foot skiff. There's me, my wife, and the guide, Colin. Little guy, he's only about, he was less than 5 foot tall, stocky, powerful boy, but, he wasn't the biggest lad you've ever met. So by now the the boat is surrounded by sharks, so they're like white tips, not huge but big enough, you know. And the way of fishing for them was to 10-0 hook on a heavy spinning rod with a chunk of barracuda on it, and literally take the bail arm off, choose which shark you wanted to catch really, and throw, you know, the lump of bait at it like a cricket ball, and then put the bail arm on and hope he took it.
Which you literally throw one cast in.
Literally, you couldn't, because it's such a big lump of stuff, you know.
Yeah.
Just throw it at it. Anyway, so I did this shark just turned and took it, tightened onto it, and, you know, got this shark on the end, and the rod's bending, and I was stood on the casting deck of a bonefish skiff, and I took one step backwards to tighten into the fish, and there was no deck left. I just went straight in the water.
Jeez, that would have been a great video clip.
Oh Christ, man! I can remember I can remember going in, and bear in mind this little boat is literally surrounded by him, and it was shallow. I felt my feet hit the, you know, the bottom, so it was maybe a little bit deeper than me. I remember thinking, this is it, and pushed back up. And as I pushed back up, my head came out the water. Colin was there, grabbed me by the shoulders and literally manhandled me back on the boat. I swear my fags were still dry. I was in and out so fast, you know. And my wife was like, you know, it was one of them, time to go home sort of thing.
47, John Horsey on Chew Valley. Thinking about it, it's probably going to be a tough day, isn't it? It's bright sun. We've had about 3 or 4 days of sweltering heat.
Yeah.
And there's a hint of a breeze out there. It might even go in a flat calm, but talking to you earlier on, if it goes flat calm, it looks like you'll be rubbing your hands together, because that's your favourite conditions.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm a competition fisherman, so I want to get an edge if I can. And the edge quite often is just a flat calm. And the reason I like sun and flat calm is you hardly ever get a flat calm day with cloud. It just doesn't happen. So you're going to get a bright sunny day, you'll get some flat calms. And quite often, any lakes you ever fish anywhere in the southern or northern hemisphere, if it's flat calm, fish rise. And if fish rise, it means they're feeding. Now, you've got to go and catch those fish, which is normally on dry fly. And also, the fish that rise then are usually the fish that are residents. They know what real food is. And on the surface tension, there is so much crud out there. There's even little things like seed heads and things. They'll pick up all of that. They'll pick up all the empty buzzer shucks, anything. And the longer it's flat calm, the more confidence they have moving on the top, and the more you can go out and target them on dries. It also means that a lot of the other methods don't work. So you know there's nobody going to be rushing around and finding a corner with a load of stockies that they can pull out on blobs and fabs, because it ain't going to happen. So you've got to go out, take your time, try and build a good bag of fish.
48, my story of the Corrib record. And all of this time, your stomach is in knots with the excitement and the adrenaline, because you really don't want this fish to come off. And I did, as I said previously, I hooked the fish 2 years before, and it was a record-sized fish that, and he came off. And I'd thought to myself, I don't want to go through that again. If this fish was going to come off, I was going to just step over the side. So anyway, I played this fish, and it looked like now, it was just over the hour, she was ready for the net. So, again, if you can imagine now, you're in the boat, the fish is behind you, you're facing the wind, and you're drifting away from the fish, which is quite difficult. And then you're down in a trough and up. So I had my big net out, had it over the side, and she came to the surface on her side, and she was just come into the net. And as she came into the net, the trough, the way the wind was, blew the boat up into the crest of the wave, and the fish slipped out and back in. You can imagine what I felt. The fish was half in the net, and she just slid back in. And at this point, I'm thinking, I was so lucky, because I could see the bait and the hooks was inside the mouth. If it had been outside on the jaws, as she slid out at the edge of the net, a good chance the hooks would have been stuck in the net, and then inevitable would happen. She would have come off. Another 10 minutes passed now. And if you can imagine, I know the size of the fish now. I've seen the size of the fish, and I still haven't got it in. So, like I said, about another 10 minutes passed now, and she came up to the surface again. And I slipped my net under this time, clean as a whistle, lifted the net, and that was it. But I didn't just lift her in straight away. I was so shattered, mentally as well as physically, hour and a quarter that fish would be on. So I held the net at the end of the gunnels for like 2 minutes. It seemed like a lifetime. Just looked over the side, see the fish there. Lift it then. One heave into the boat. And I could see then that this was the record. 49, Stuart Foxall. Oh, is it?
Yeah.
Targeting
steelhead, which is their version of sea trout. It's rainbow trout that have just come back to sea, and they come back to spawn.
And what sort of size are they you can expect to get there then?
The best one I've had's probably been about £25. Absolute monster. And to be honest, it was one of the first ones I got as well, so I didn't really realise what a fish of a lifetime it was. They class a 40-inch fish as about £20, and that's what you want. I've had 2 of those. On the Skeena, a 40-inch fish, because they're so chunky, and compared to other river steelhead, they're a few pounds heavier than that. So I can remember it was the year that Icelandic volcano went off.
Oh, yeah.
And it stopped some trips. And I was about 3 days late getting over there to meet some friends. And to be fair to the lodge, they said, don't worry about it, you can still do your week. So I got a guide to myself on the last 3 days, who I got on with really well, Scott. And Scott was like, do you mind if I fish? And I was like, I don't mind at all. So we was just fishing down runs and whatever. And on the final day, he said, you've had enough steelhead. He said, do you fancy trying to get a Chinook, which is a
red salmon?
Yeah. So I was like, yeah. So we was fishing with bigger rods and heavier tips. And I managed to get one. I got about £20 in the morning. And he was like, well, you've had the first one on the river. That's fantastic. I mean, he was made up. He'd done his job and carried on fishing.
Well, they all got that look, like a big hump.
No, not when they come in fresh. They only start to get that hump when they get ready to spawn.
Do they?
Yeah.
Oh, right.
So we fished through on the afternoon, and somebody was in a run that we wanted to get to, and we was fishing somewhere we didn't want to be, and literally within half an hour they'd moved, and I said, go on, let's jump in there, but they haven't caught anything, and it didn't look as if they'd fished it that well. So we went over, and literally he dropped me off, and he said, while I'm in the boat, I'm just going up the corner to get some cigarettes. As soon as the boat went round the corner, my rod went down, got this bloody big steelhead on, landed it myself, and as soon as I released it, took a few photos, released it, the boat come round the corner and he saw me get up, and he went, you've had one, haven't you? And I said, yeah, I've had a good one. And I showed him the pictures, and I'd got it next to my rod, so we measured the rod after, and he was like, do you realise how many bloody years I'd fished before I got a steelhead that big?
And you had to be on your own.
Yeah. But I mean, it'll always be in my mind, that's the main thing.
Episode 50, my evening fishing dries at Llinfawr. The breeze is picking up lovely. I say breeze is picking up lovely because the last time I was here, in the evening, the wind drops. So often the case, which is nice. But because this place is surrounded by forestry, you tend to get a lot of midges. And when it's calm, Jesus, it's a nightmare. I'll tell a little story, actually. I was here one day, many years ago. And we tried everything to stop the midges biting, you know. And there was a guy who was with me then, Mike Meelan, school teacher. He had an idea, because we'd been fishing a couple of nights previous and were eaten alive, of wearing a pair of women's tights on his head. He looked like a bank robber, which is all well and good. And he was saying, it's great. You know, the midges, fair play. He wouldn't bite through the tights. But the thing was, he also had hay fever, which wasn't a great combination. Because when he sneezed, you can imagine, it looked like his face exploded. Yep. Yeah. Time to move. I'm going to go just down the bank and work my way down the shore. Nice time of year to fish this. There's a lot of heather on the banks and a lot of foxgloves. It's a lovely colour, the purple. Right, I'm covering new water here now. Oh! Yep. Oh, another great fish. That fish was about 10 yards out. I could see the bottom, see the flash. $51 Illtyd Griffiths.
The sea trout at sea will, if they're eating sprats, say, they will corral the sprats. The whole pile of these sea trout will corral the sprats, and they will dive in there, stun them, very much like fry feeders, trout fry feeders, and then they'll come round and they'll eat them. And they become sated. You know, they can't eat any more. Their stomachs are absolutely full. And then they will literally sit on the bottom. You know, again, we don't say the bottom, but you know what I mean?
Yeah.
They go down in the water and they do no activity. And it doesn't matter whether it's a 10-pound fish or a 3-pound fish. Their stomach juices, their digestive juices will work pretty well at the same rate. So when they're hungry or they need feeding again, they're going to all need feeding at the same time. Yeah? And then they go through this exercise again of corralling the fish, stunning them, eating as much as they can, which is why we have this phenomenal growth rate in some of these fish, right? You know, I mean, why do you get 16, 18, 20-pound sea trout? You know, they're big fish. They're not going to grow to that sort of size any more than the big trout in the college will grow to that size if they're going to eat flies or eat small things. They've got to eat something substantial to maintain or to gain that weight and maintain it. So is it a matter, therefore, that when these fish are sitting in pools, that suddenly that urge to do something comes to them all at the same time? Right? Comes to them all. So if one takes, another one's going to take, another one's going to take, right? For a short period of time, a short period of activity. And I've seen me catch 3 fish in half an hour on a night when I caught nothing else and I've been out all night. It all happened maybe between 1 and 1:30 or 2 and 2:30, whatever, right? Yeah. Suddenly, boom, boom, boom. And then nothing again. So fishing pools is a game of patience.
52 Tim Llewellyn.
Anyway, we'd had a couple of fish, had a couple of browns, and we'd heard, a few stories, and they say about the big browns coming out of Savages, Savages Creek, tend to haunt around that areas, and we'd gone up there and we'd had a few, not many, a couple of rainbows and all. So anyway, I set up on a SSI line and 3 dull backs and a cutthroat cat on the point, size 10. I'd had this cat off one of the tight line boys, season before, and it was like a revelation, this cat,
Cutthroat cat? A
cutthroat cat, yeah. It had come out round about then. See, they'd had it secretly stashed away, I expect, didn't they, and I managed to get hold of one, and, fair play, it was a good...
What's the difference between a standard
Well,
cat?
just, they had the chartreuse body, then they had the red throat on it, a wrap of red around the front, and that seemed to trigger the trout, the normal cat whisker, booby. So I had one of them on the point, the size 12 black dull back, next one up. And I think I had a cruncher on or another dowel in the cruncher. But anyway, I cast out. And it was a warmish day. Sun, not good for browns really, And I chucked about 20 yards out really. And I give the line a pull, to pop the booby a bit. And then started to get in, just going to get into the figure of 8 mode, for nymphing. And I looked out and I could see something just going over the line. I thought, oh, shite, bloody pike. So anyway, I just carried on and figured out a little bit, and I could see my line now gradually stiffening up, and then looking down, it's clear. I thought, bloody hell. And then, whoosh, God, he was in. Turned to Dave, I said, oh, I think that bloody pike. He said, that ain't no pike, but... Well, anyway, 20 minutes, 25 minutes, he was just boring down. Fair play for Dave, he stopped fishing, put his tackle on the side, got the drogue in, which was important, I suppose. You know, he was out in open water, but the drogue was out. So, fair play for him, he got all that in, and then it just dogged me around the boat then for 25 minutes, easy. And then when we seen it, God, the heart was pumping and racing, and then it'd go down again, and you were thinking, oh, the leader's going to go, all these things are going through your mind, and we might lose the fish and all. It's a fish of a lifetime, you know.
All did it point?
He took the size 12 dull back, next one up from the cat, look. So I could see the cat, just out, and I just knew he'd taken the dull back. Anyway, eventually slipped the net under it. Just couldn't believe the size of it,
53, Steve Pope on Blagden.
Well, the story there is that in 1906, there was an acclimatisation committee in New Zealand, Otago, acclimatisation committee, and they wanted to bring species in from overseas, and they wanted the best brown trout go into their rivers. And they contacted, I believe, the editor of the Fishing Gazette at the time, R.B. Marston, who then got in contact with Donald Carr, the head ranger here, and this was 1906. So they agreed to send some Blagden over to New Zealand, an initial consignment of 10,000, and alongside some Lochleven over. I believe they went over as well. But they sent them over in containers called Howitown cases. That came from, I think, Howitown was up in Stirling, and it was a Victorian fish farm that specialised in transporting over. And so Donald Carr got hold of some of these Howitown cases, and they actually took the eggs from fish that were over 4 pounds in weight. None of them were under 4 pounds, but they stripped eggs from fish over 4 pounds because of the quality. And these fish the Blagden fish, original fish, were Lochleven strain mixed with River Yeo. So it was a River Yeo stream brownie mixed with a Lochleven brownie. And they, like I said, it was 10,000, the initial consignment. They were all packed very, very carefully in sphagnum moss. And they went over to New Zealand. It took around about a 6-week period. They went over on a ship called the SS Maori, and that docked at Dunedin, and the chief engineer was responsible for looking after those small eggs, and he would have to go in there every day, check the temperature, and add ice as well to make sure that it was kept at a constant temperature. But when they got to the other side, 85% of them had survived. So they were then introduced to the rivers out there, but going back to the chief engineer, he was given a £5 by the Otago Acclimatisation Committee for his efforts in actually getting them there over that period of time, because that must have been really difficult to do.
54, my tactics for estuary bass. So if the high tide is 12 o'clock, I want to be fishing not just 2 hours before, 2.5 hours before. And the reason for this is, what I found, the tide won't actually change. If you get there 2.5 hours before, and you're fishing, you're casting out, the current of the river is still taking your line down. So the momentum of the tide haven't started yet. It's 2.5 hours before. What I have found, at that lull point, where your fly line just stops flowing to the sea, it's where the momentum of the tide is starting to come in. And there's a moment where it just, probably about 10 minutes or so, I'd say, where it's almost like fishing in still water. And it's that point, it's not 2 hours before, it's 2.25. And at that point, what I've noticed, there are quite a few fish in come in first. And then you see the anglers come in. Now, they've missed 15 minutes of fishing. Now, I've caught some of my better fish and good fish at this 15-minute point, the first ones that come in. So be prepared, get switched on and wait. And as soon as that water stops flowing, that's the time you're going to start catching. 55, Ceri Thomas, fishing in Wales.
Looking back on the season, on the videos you look, and I saw one clip which you put on, must have been at the start of the season, and I felt for you when I seen it. Did you hook and lose a humongous salmon?
Oh yeah, oh man, I'd forgotten about this. This is quite a good story. So yeah, there's a bit of the Wye that I'm in the club, Gwent Angling, and you know we've got some good water.
Gwent Angling?
Gwent Angling Society, yeah.
Yeah.
And we got a beat down at Wirestone near Monmouth, and it's got a good run for the salmon. And I was down there fishing with Anthony Evans, my mate from West Wales, you know, and he was flogging away with the fly rod, the double hander. Nothing, but there was fish showing, and I picked up my spinning rod, and cast that in and hooked into this.
Was it a flying sea or something?
Flying sea, yeah, single barbless hook, and hooked into this thing that basically stuck on the bottom, you know, but I could tell it was a fish, you know, but could barely do a thing with it. And then it went downstream, like a screaming run of 50, 60 yards, like off the reel, you know. And again, just praying, you know, the fish would stay on. He came back up for the current. I was shouting to Anthony to get the phone, you know, to film it, because I had him back in my mind, oh, this would be brilliant if we can land this fish, talk about it, you know, for fishing in Wales. But then the fish kind of did this thing where it sort of wallowed, and the head and shoulders of the fish like came out of the water. And
it was a fair distance out, wasn't it?
Oh yeah, but Jesus, it was like a bloke jumping in and belly
it was like
flopping.
a cow's leg.
Yeah, it was unbelievable. It was a springer, like, you know, and the average size of the fish being caught at that time, the beat down below us had several like 25 pound.
Yeah, I looked at
springers, you know, and it looked that, and you know, we obviously it came off just that shake of the head, you know, and that boosh. And yeah,
when I saw the splash, it looked like someone fell out of a plane.
It did, didn't it? Like a couple of breeze blocks being thrown in. It was yeah.
And I just saw you going, holding your head.
Yeah.
Oh no!
I know. Oh no! yeah.
56, English International and Snowbee marketing manager Simon Kidd.
You got into rivers then, did you?
I did, yeah. I learned to cast properly, and I didn't not properly, but I learned to fish with my dad's old all-cock rod, an old reel, and a silk line, which I used to cast for hours outside in the garden sort of thing, or on the field outside their farmhouse, struggling to cast. And the harder I tried, the worse I got. But I was very keen to.
You still got it?
I have, yeah. Yeah, I would never
keep
get rid of
something like that.
Yeah, I would never get rid of that. Yeah, I've still got the line as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, I learnt on that, and a Millwood reel it was called, a Millwood, an old reel. But yeah, and there wasn't much stillwater fishing to be had, but there were some rivers. I learned on the River Team at Fingalbridge, small trout, lots of trout, and quickly learned to catch them. I used to go rock hopping. I didn't have any waders, so I'd hop between the rocks, catch the fish, and I loved it. It was all dry fly. My headmaster at my primary school in Cheriton Bishop, he was a mad keen fisherman. He used to make his own rods and stuff like that as well. And he gave me a couple of flies, and he showed me how to tie them along with my dad. And Jack Hargreaves, do you remember him?
Yeah.
Out of Town, I think it's called.
Yeah.
I met him once, and
Did you?
with his son, with my dad. And my dad knew him, and because he was from Dorset or Hampshire area somewhere, and my dad knew him and introduced me to him. And I met his son, and his son showed me how to tie my first fly.
Wow.
And so I learned how to fly tie from then on. So.
Because
I got into it.
You can watch it on YouTube now. You can see.
Can you?
Yeah, I watched them on YouTube because I remember back then when he was on the TV, and it was the second half I was always interested in, because the first half was something else to do with the country, maybe shooting or whatever.
Yeah.
The second half was always fishing, and I just couldn't wait to the second half.
The second half.
Yeah. And I watched him the other day now, and he's there with his pipe.
Yeah.
You know, he's a character, like, isn't he?
57, Justin Connolly.
August, I think. So the weather was pretty good.
and took them down. They'd never fished before, done a lot of shooting and things together. And I just said, it's really tricky wading here on the hotel, especially certain beats. I said, just be careful with the wading, take a stick. I've got a couple of wading staffs there, take one of those. And so her husband had moved downstream, and she was, oh, look at him, he's casting really well. And she turned round to watch him, went straight over a boulder, bang, straight under. So I leant forward, grabbed the front of her waders, pulled her straight up. And she was like trying to catch her breath because the water was cold. I thought, oh, you take her to the bank. She said, no, I'm fine. Anyway, she said, just go and deal with my husband. I'll go and get dried off and I'll come back. I said, yeah, okay. So I'm down with her husband and he turns around. He's like, oh, she's at it again. So I turned around and have a look like that. She stood on a bank in a little black bikini. And I'm like, oh, okay. She said, oh, since I'm wet now, I'm going to have a swim. Push, straight in she went and just swam up the pool. These guys were like late 60s. Yeah, didn't bother at all. Didn't faze her at all.
58, Emma Lewis.
I won it by doing fishing with one fly. One small little black lead head. And the secret was to change them. I'd fish with that for half an hour, catch 2 or 3, and then change it to white. And then fish with that for a couple of fish, and then change it to orange. And then come back to black. And that's the way I did it on the first day, because at nearly 12 o'clock, I didn't have a fish on the first day. And I think it was finishing at 4 o'clock or 4:30. But by 4:30, I had 21 fish. And I'd done it on that process of changing, listening to him and listening
used to the fly.
And I remember coming the second day, Jeremy was about, I think he had about 14 on the first day, and he was a good angler. And I remember he knew where I was going to fish again the next day. And he came opposite me on the other side of the arm to fish with me. And I could see him fishing. And I don't think that was good news, because I could see him catching fish. And he had the shooting head he had.
Yeah.
And he used to go miles out with a shooting head. I can see him now fishing. And he was casting towards me. And suddenly I looked up in the air and I could see this shooting head, this line coming through the air towards me. And what had happened, it had broken loose from the backing. And the shooting led him. And I was very happy in my mind, mind you. He slowed him down a bit, because he'd caught quite a number of fish. Well, I hadn't had only one, I think. So I said, well, the best thing for you to do, Lewis, I said, was to move. Don't look at it, Jeremy. Let him tie another shooting head and go somewhere else. And that's what I did. I went to somewhere else, and I was fortunate enough to catch another 9 or 10 fish. And that was enough for me to carry the day.
59 and 60, Russ Owen.
Bowls of soup and something in the lodge.
Yeah, it's quite posh, isn't it?
Yeah,
good,
yeah.
You know, and then we come off the boat without packed lunches and stuff.
That's right, yeah. Yeah, we did when we went into the
we just sat down
dinner corner.
And then I started eating my food, and I could see the chef across the far side of the room. If looks good, kill. He's staring at me, and I couldn't figure it out.
I'd forgotten about that. I think I did the bowl of soup, and you said, I'm okay, I've got some sandwiches, but they didn't like that much, did they? Strange, I don't know really why that is, yeah. But I think that you had a bowl of soup after as well, didn't you?
Yeah, I felt guilty then.
Yeah.
I laughed then, because when we went back, and he said,
Phil
Wood was there
after,
the
fishing
and
then,
he said, and he actually came up to me and he said that the chef wasn't too happy. What made me laugh then, he said, you're lucky you didn't have a kebab.
Yeah. After practice, and we sort of established that there was a lot of fish in that dam basin area, but it was very windy. Now, people have been catching and pulling on previous days and practice days, but come match day, it really did blow up, and to an extent where it borderline whether we should have even been on the water. The safety boat was sat on the down wall, making sure everyone was okay all day. But we found that floaters were the best, because we had a couple of fabs and a couple of nymphs, but the floater we thought was the best because the surface tension tends to move faster than the boat in a big swell, because you've got the drogue out, whereas the surface water is moving fast. Yeah. And a floating line sits in the surface tension, so it was staying tight, so you could fish almost static or very slow. Nice. And your floater stays tight the whole time. Your flies might sink a little bit, but you're not constantly trying to catch your flies up where you would be.
Because
with
the rope is slowing you down so much.
Yeah, with a tip line or a sinking line, you're going to have to be retrieving your flies quite fast just to stay in contact. But a floater, you just let the surface tension do the work, so you almost got a tight line. I know your flies are sinking a little bit, so you get a little bit of a hinge effect.
Will there be fish outside the cages? No, you'll see them. I can see a smile on your face.
Yeah, there is, yeah. We've got pets by the jetty, but these are a different calibre down here. Yeah, there's fish that hang about under the nets. But this is where they live.
So these fish now are actually out.
Yeah, these are
in the lake.
Yeah, these fish live outside the nets. Yeah.
Nothing holding them here. Look at that! Look at that! You must have it going in.
Nice brownie. That's a double. That's a double, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh. Massive, isn't it?
I think that's in the lake.
Massive. That's nothing. Nothing to what's in.
62, Colin Follen.
Fish for an hour and a half. So not a pull, nothing. The salmon were jumping over his fly line, and the language out of now, you wouldn't hear it out of a docker, what was coming out of his mouth.
Yeah.
And after an hour and a half, I says to him, I says, Declan, I says, they're not going to, he kept saying to me, what fly will I pick next? And, you know, I was telling him, oh, you put this on now, put that on now. And after an hour and a half, you know, he handed me the fly box and he says, what will I put on there? And I says, they're not going to take anything in that box, I said to him. And he looked at me, his jaw dropped, and he says, I can bought this box of flies off you, he says to me, you know. So I says, I know, I says, but you're going to have to step outside the box here now. So
if you've enjoyed this episode and want to listen to more, please consider becoming a Patreon. Follow me on Facebook or Instagram, or visit my website, thecastingwithkellyjones.com.